It is awesome to be here talking with my favorite governor in America and my governor, Governor Ron DeSantis.
Thank you. I know we've got a lot of Floridians in the house, but I know we've got some folks that are visiting, and I know we've got a number of relatively recent Floridians in the house.
I mean, the corporate press has done, as I've suggested, more to make you a household name than anything else in America. It is truly incredible how they have turned every narrative they think against you, and then it's as though they are Sideshow Bob stepping on rakes. The most recent iteration of this was, of course, what they called the so-called Don't Say Gay bill, in which the entire corporate media all at once declared that a bill that nowhere in it says the word gay, or says don't say gay, or anything remotely like that, was deemed by the entire mainstream media, legacy media, the Don't Say Gay bill. And this was trotted out everywhere, all the way up to the White House. You had Jen Psaki at the White House suggesting that the DOJ was going to be unleashed on states like Florida that refused to indoctrinate kids in this sort of stuff. What did you make of the controversy over the Parental Rights in Education Act, which, again, by polling data, has a majority of support among Democrats in this country, including Democratic primary voters in the state of Florida?
So it's interesting with the parental rights in education because it was actually not my bill. So I had a bill that we were focused on at the beginning for curriculum transparency, which would implicate some of the things with this, but parents in Florida have a right to know what curriculum is being taught to their kids, and that's just basic for me. We also had a Stop Woke Act to go after CRT, both in K through 12 education and higher education, and corporate CRT in the workplace, which is really significant. I'm going to sign that in the law probably within the next couple weeks. So the parental rights in education was interesting because I did not know what was being done to try to get this in with these very young kids. So the legislature in Florida starts debating this. And so I'm out just doing my stuff around the state. And these reporters start badgering me about this. And they're saying this bill. And I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, I haven't read it, but I know they're lying. I know the media is lying because I see them whipping up a narrative, whipping up a frenzy. I see the left doing it and the media amplifying it. So then I was like, okay, I asked my staff, I was like, what is the latest on this thing? And I'm reading this thing, and I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. This is the hill that they want to die on? And so at that point, it had received so much negative attention that I don't think it would have passed the Florida legislature had I not engaged in it. And so I said, okay, I am not going to let the media smear what's going on in Florida. So I started fighting back. If the media started using these slogans, I would call them out on it. I'd ask them to say, where is that in the bill? I'd ask them to tell me what the bill does. I'd make them recite the exact language, and I'd get them to finally acknowledge what it is, that yes, we're not going to be injecting concepts like transgenderism into kindergarten or first grade. That is inappropriate. We're not going to do it.
So, Governor DeSantis, I want to talk about some sort of broad national trends and what you think the future of the country looks like. So, I will say that I've become happier, more peaceful, more optimistic having moved to the state of Florida. People who know me don't recognize my level of relaxation at this point. I speak at least 5% slower than I did before, which puts me in human audio range. It's been good for the show, frankly. But I think one of the reasons that I've been so positive is because you really don't see federalism. As a conservative living in a blue state, you don't see federalism. You just see the federal government. The federal government and the state government mirror each other. Here, the federal government and the state government largely do not. And so I'm putting a lot of faith in the federalist structure. What do you think is sort of the future of the federalist structure as the national government seems to seek further and further encroachment?
Well, I think Ben mentioned the voter registration trends in Florida. We've had about a 400,000 shift from Democrat to Republican just since I've been governor. Not a little over 3 years ago, I took office. And so on this pace, by my election in 2022, we will have had probably over a 500,000 registration shift in just 4 years. That is incredible. And so people will always ask in Florida, I mean, it's a kind of a pressing thing. Like, okay, we've led the country in net in-migration since COVID, right? And that is clearly a sign of success because people vote with their feet. They're fleeing bad policies. They're coming to a state that's free. They're coming to a state that's a law and order state. They're coming to a state that has all these different good qualities. And so we're proud of that. But I have supporters who'll say, Governor, who the heck are these people? Are they going to leave a blue state and then vote the same doggone way that people vote in New York or wherever and then turn this state in that direction? And honestly, there is cause for concern because if you look at, like Texas would have all these companies move from California over the years. So you'd have companies move from San Francisco to Austin and they'd bring hundreds of employees with them. And those employees would vote the exact same way they voted that turned San Francisco into the dumpster fire that it is. And it's like the leftism, they will not draw the connection between their leftist ideology and the destruction that's all around them. And so it is a problem because I do think there's a class of voters who would come to Florida and they would continue to vote the same way. Well, here's the statistics. Not only have you seen the trend from D to R, if you look since COVID, all 49 other states, and you looked at each one individually, all 49 have had more Republicans move into Florida than Democrats move into Florida. And so that's pretty significant. Not one state has sent more Democrats to Florida than Republicans. So I think what that's telling me is that people are very sensitive to the state governments that they live under. I think COVID opened a lot of people's eyes because literally who your governor was the difference between your kid even being able to go to school at all, or you being able to work, or your business able to be operational or not. And so I think that made people more sensitive. I think the riots caused people to say, you know what, if you don't have public safety, then none of this economy or education is gonna matter much. You got to be safe, and they look to law and order states like Florida for leadership. So I think you have a lot of factors that is causing people to seek out jurisdictions that reflect their values more so than at any time in the history of the country.
We'll get to more on this in just 1 second. First, you all know about Ring Doorbell. I've been talking about it for literally years. Did you know they also make an alarm? It is true. Ring Alarm. It's an award-winning home security system with available professional monitoring when you subscribe. Best of all, you can easily install it yourself, which is why I've teamed up with Ring. Probably even heard me talk about how I use Ring Alarm to protect my home. Well, now I've gone pro with Ring Alarm Pro. Ring Alarm Pro, it's a next-level security system. CNET calls Ring Alarm Pro a giant leap for home security. I use it. They're correct. Ring Alarm Pro is awesome. It protects my entire home and the Wi-Fi it runs on as well. With Ring Alarm Pro, Ring combined a home security system and a Wi-Fi router, so this thing helps protect your home and your network, so I have a secure network with an amazing signal for all the devices across my home. If you're like me, that's a lot of devices. So now when I'm out or traveling, I know everything at home is protected and connected and that it will stay that way. With the Ring Protect Pro subscription, which is an amazing deal, by the way, I get professional monitoring for the ultimate peace of mind. If anything happens, professional monitoring will call and can request emergency services. I've been using Ring for years. Now, every time I'm out of town, I check in using my Ring app, and that means that I can keep track of my kids. Also, I just know what's going on in my property at all times. You may not have known it, but it's true. Ring has an award-winning alarm. That's why I've teamed up with Ring, and now I've gone pro with Ring Alarm Pro. To learn more, go to ring.com/Ben Shapiro. That's ring.com/Ben Shapiro to get started today. That does raise another issue that I think Florida is now a national leader in, and it really has, I think, shifted how a lot of people are thinking about politics nationally. So back in 2002, there was a political theorist named Roy Teixeira, and he wrote a book called The New Emerging Democrat Majority. And his basic theory was that as America became more ethnically diverse, it would also become more Democrat. That black voters would continue to vote in outsized numbers for Democrats, that Hispanic voters would continue to vote in outsized numbers for Democrats. Florida has bucked the trend so strongly that Teixeira has now completely revised his thesis. He basically now says that thesis was garbage because, as it turns out, Hispanic voters are voting in increasing numbers for Republicans. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what happened in Florida, because this was the going theory in Democratic Party circles, and in many cases still is the going theory in Democratic Party circles. Florida is becoming more diverse and more Republican.
No, I think without question, and I think that, well, a couple things. I mean, one, in South Florida, we have unique constituencies of people who have either firsthand or through their family knowledge and understanding of the evils of centralized power, whether it's communism, socialism, what have you. People have fled Castro's Cuba. They fled under Chavez and now Maduro from Venezuela. They fled Nicaragua. They know, and they're very sensitive to these leftist ideologies. And so when you have a Democratic Party that's increasingly mimicking a lot of the rhetoric that accompanied Chavez's rise to power, for example, there's folks down here who see that for what it is, and it repels them. And they look for the Republican Party to be the place where they're at. And so I think we have a little bit more of a unique situation than anybody else, just because of the real strong understanding and sensitivity about this leftist ideologies and what they can do in Southern Florida. However, we've seen the movement across the board. If you look at Central Florida, if you look at how Donald Trump performed there, he had huge shift in his direction in a place like Osceola County. I just signed a pro-life bill on Thursday, and we did it in a Puerto Rican church in Kissimmee in Central Florida. We had the church was totally packed. We had people there from both parties, from that community, who were excited, that we were standing for their values. And so I think what's happened is, the Democrat elites are so detached from the values of just average people, but particularly blue-collar constituencies. And so you have a lot of Latinos, they're working hard, they're religious, their values are just so much different than what the Democratic Party is selling them. When you tell them that a man can get pregnant, that does not go over well. When you tell them that first graders should be instructed in things like pansexualism, that's what the lady at Disney said, we need pansexualism. And I said, I don't know what pansexualism is, but I know I don't want my 5-year-old daughter anywhere near it, so just leave us alone with that. But when they see that stuff, that is something that really drives them away. And so I think this woke ideology has been the best friend for Republicans. I think also just the fact that, in Florida, we were the ones that were fighting the lockdowns. We were protecting their right to work and businesses to operate and their kids for being able to be in school. And I think you saw a left wing of a Democratic Party that had no regard for people's rights, no regard for their livelihoods, no regard for their aspirations. So this trend is real. I think you're going to continue to see it. I don't know in terms of African Americans exactly, what the possibilities are in the short term. I think that you're likely to see some erosion. I think you'll probably see less enthusiasm for Biden just because he's done so poorly. But I can tell you, certainly with Hispanic voters, you are seeing, and this is from all different, quote, denominations, regardless of you're seeing a move right. And so my view is just stand up for what's right. And you're going to have opportunities to have much bigger margins than anyone thought were possible for Republicans.
So, Governor, I think one of the fears that I think a lot of conservatives have, and it's a perennial fear, is that the Republican Party somehow gains power again, nationally speaking, and then doesn't do its job. It always feels as though the ratchet only works one way, that the best that Republicans can do is sort of the William F. Buckley routine. You stand on the rails of history shouting stop, but it turns out the train just keeps sort of moving you down the track, maybe just a little bit more slowly. And when you look at how the Republican Party in the past has treated power, you do see that. You see the Republican Party spending enormous amounts of money. You see the Republican Party shying away from the most important cultural battles. I mean, you've taken a lot of these battles head on, but there are many other governors who are Republicans who have run screaming from these battles, gone on national television, criticized you for taking part in that battle. How do you think the Republican Party needs to change in order to become more of a fighting party for conservatives?
Well, look, I'm doing the best I can for the people of the state. That's what motivates me. But we're on offense, and we're not just going to sit there and let the left define the agenda. We're not going to let the media define the agenda. We are going out and we are getting in front of issues that matter to people. And I'm able to do that partially because since I've been governor, I have not taken a single poll. I don't know. I just know I grew up here. I was raised here. I was born here. I know the folks. I get out every day in different communities and talk to people, and I know what I believe. And so my job as a leader is to set the course, execute on my vision, And if you do that successfully, people will get your back. People will follow. And so that's a different model, I think, than the typical Republican has had, because I think they're always so gun shy about, oh, well, if we do this, the media is going to criticize us. You know, when I was in Congress, they wouldn't send subpoenas about things like the IRS scandal because they were worried about the media criticizing them for overreach. And I thought to myself, like, this is nuts. You're neutering yourselves. So I think what these Republicans have to understand is you cannot let corporate media curtail your agenda. That you cannot be worried about what they're going to say. These are bad faith actors. They are not operating in ways that are fair. And their whole job is to try to concoct narratives that are going to benefit our political opponents and that are going to kneecap our own agenda. So what I don't do is I do not respond to corporate media pressure. I don't respond to corporate media criticism. Heck, the way I view it is, if they're criticizing me, I must be over the target. I must be doing something right. And that's just how we have to be.
Well, Governor DeSantis, I already have my Make America Florida t-shirt. I have been wearing it publicly. And it really is an honor to have you here. Everybody, Governor Ron DeSantis.
God bless. Thank you.